If we look at it deeply, the story of the Samaritan woman is an accidental pencil sketch of a tantric journey that demonstrates the values Tantra and Koan study have in common. Here's why. Individual differences are positions of tension, illogical ego reducers. The Samaritans were crazy different from Jews, and Jesus generally left those differences alone. The tacit suggestion in what Jesus doesn't do is don't theologize around your discomfort. Instead, cease to think altogether. If I'm correct about Koan's study, one of its important asks is let the unknowns be unresolved. Making headway with them involves getting the ego to sit still despite the mind's craving for logic, control, and its own rectitude. In the text, Jesus asks the Samaritan woman to call your husband and come back. Either positively, negatively, or neutrally, we want to judge the Samaritan woman. In just about all cases, such judgment is limitedly worthwhile. Even with all the ways it is worthwhile, here's the kicker. Judgment, negative, positive, or seemingly morally neutral, isn't free. We can get hooked on the shallow power that comes with judgment. It can really wreck our serenity and cause all sorts of lingering anxieties. Koans relativize place. Where should we worship? Asks the Samaritan woman. On this mountain or in Jerusalem? The mention that Jesus' encounter took place at about noon makes monks think of the demon of Achadia, what monastics call the noonday demon. So I'll offer an autobiographical bit. At some point, all the petty differences between monks and monasteries serve to ask the question, would you rather be right or live with others? The monastery's strong implication is that you can't do both. That's highly uncomfortable. And the point of the monastery is neither to medicate that discomfort with material goods, like food or possessions, nor to seek ideological relief in, for instance, the entitlements of vanity or pride, or for that matter, shifting from place to place, finding another monastery if one doesn't suit you. There's a resolution for this. It's one of the empowerments that Brother Vincent of Metkin gave me without knowing he was doing it. He said, everyone is right and everyone is wrong. If you think otherwise, you'll drive yourself nuts. And here's the tie-in that brings us back to the Samaritan woman. When practitioners realize that everyone is a little bit wrong and everyone is a little bit right, the body in the present moment becomes the place of solitude. Where we are doesn't matter, and what we're doing doesn't matter. The teacher says, the hour is coming and is now here when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. The message is pretty strong. Give up all forms of self, even the ego that has trouble with spiritual practice, and everything, everywhere, always will become a place of worship. There's another bit in the story that's patently tantric. The text says, Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. Women were seen as possessions. Samaritan women were even worse off. In that situation, humanizing chit-chat was an amazingly rare occurrence. Tantra has a principle. Embrace the taboos and don't then rationalize and self-justify because of it. In addition to routinely associating with society's so-called undesirables, Jesus fully assumed a position as a criminal, a failed pretender to the throne in Jerusalem. Jesus absolutely failed to meet all the expectations associated with the kind of political messiah that the book of Judges taught people to expect. Failure, for us in Christian Tantra, is the doorway to shadow work. It's not at all comfortable, but it ultimately does good ego-reducing work. Christian Tantra works with recollection, the ingathering of the senses when attention and intention are focused on sensations. Jhana meditation in Buddhism is similar in that, as far as I know, it cultivates attention at the expense of reflection. But it gives a piece of advice that I missed that I'm playing with, making it a part of my recollection-based contemplative practice. Everything I've learned about jhana meditation says, if your breath gets shallow, focus on pleasant sensation. I'm a 44-year-old, slightly disabled man with a mountain of unprocessed resentments. Focusing on negative sensation and emotion is more native to me than I'm comfortable with. But my sitting lately has made me realize that focusing on pleasant sensation involves a chosen attention to subtlety. Maharaji said to Ram Dass, give up anger and tell the truth. And it induced in Ram Dass an intense grief response. And I'm realizing that I missed opportunities to hear the proclamation of all things because I'm nursing unrealistic expectations about only the most pleasant of the things. So I think more and more about Christian Tantra as a practice of second chances. It's not the prevailing messianism, the political model that Christ embodied, but the suffering servant model that he lived, one that accommodated death and failure. It's not the barrage of inescapable noise that heals our attention. It's choosing to note the subtleties of a quiet room that does the work for us. The name of God is not found in the shallow breathing that comprises a trauma response, but in the restful breathing that we happen on when we stop thinking about how to relax and simply do it. Tantra won't allow denial of intense sensations, pain, ego, ecstasy, but humility increasingly consists of choosing to pay attention with ever-increasing subtlety. I don't always like the facts, but the fact is, my life of faith is similar to that of the Samaritan woman. Jesus has spent years highlighting my faults. From those years, I came away thinking, he told me all I ever did, considering him at least a prophet whose teachings can't be ignored. All of reality says it. If you had known the gift of God and who it is who is speaking to you, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. We have to contend with the possibility that some external spiritual teachers are just embodiments of our intuition. What if the living water is ego-reducing, focused attention and intention? But lately, I need to go further. Take responsibility for using breathing, listening, and feeling to connect with the pleasant aspects of the present moment. The new emotional muscle I'm learning to flex is not expecting things I find negative to cease existing. That involves choice and fortitude. And as this practice deepens, my intuition switches accordingly, asks, he can't be the Messiah, can he? Jesus merely says, I am he, the one who is speaking to you. And I like to think it could also be translated, I am the one who is speaking to you. In other words, whenever we hear with the ear of our hearts, whoever spoke is another Christ, and he nourishes with words. Whether it's the stones that have cried out, or an apostle, or our own flesh. Our hearing is the food we didn't know we had. This is a hard saying, and to hear is a blessing. Now, the only question is, can we allow it?